Hana is a fight-loving and adventurous freak who inherits his family's powers. But unlike boring mid-Boruto, his wish is granted when a family conflict erupts, challenging him to fight for leadership within the Asakura clan. Asakura Hana sits in the usual Funbari Hill cemetery and is approached by a bunch of thugs who want to fight. He takes them up on their offer and knocks their asses easily through the use of Amidamaru, his shaman samurai spirit. He later returns home and gets scolded seriously by his guardian, Tamao Tamamura, who strictly forbids him from using his samurai spirits for public fights until the next shaman fight. Minutes later, Tamao approaches Amidamaru and tells him to be more cautious as she has recently been sensing a strange presence in the town. Later that night, two strange people appear at the cemetery. They claim to be descendants of the Asakura family, who have come to regain their rights to the lineage by ending the Asakura main line. The following day, Hana heads to the graveyard and finds his favorite tombstone ruined. While trying to figure out who could have been responsible for it, he gets confronted by a boy around his age who claims to be headed to his school. Introducing himself as Yohane Asakura, the boy reveals himself to be a shaman and challenges Hana to a fight to become a real Asakura. Despite his threats, Hana laughs at the goofy-looking child and extends the mockery to his samurai spirit, calling them fakes. He then attacks him using a technique only known to his family line, and to his surprise, Yohane replicates the technique and counters his attack. Back at the inn, Ponchi and Konchi inform Tamao, who's responsible for the strange presence she has been feeling. They are Yohane Asakura and Luka Asakura, direct descendants of Asakura Hao, who broke off during the Heian period. They tell her that they have found Hana and are currently trying to kill him. Back to the losers, Yohane uses a different technique that sends Hana flying till he crashes against a tree. Oh! While Hana struggles to regain his consciousness, Amidamaru re-examines Yohane's accessories and confirms that he's from the Asakura clan because there's no other way he could have gotten them. As Hana regains his consciousness, Yohane disses his lineage, triggering the poor dolt. The roaster then proceeds to use an advanced technique called Oversoul to materialize his Ronin spirit and turn it into a very large weapon. In turn, Hana brings out a very rare legendary relic and uses that same technique, transforming it into a different kind of weapon. In the quest to acquire the relic, alongside the Asakura clan privileges, Yohane charges toward Hana with his weapon, but Hana, who seems to have just gotten excited to finally be able to go all out against an opponent, deflects his attack and easily destroys his weapon before sending him flying into the air. He tells Yohane to himself and then knocks the daylight out of him. Tamao is visibly disturbed, as the other Asakura clan members were supposed to have died a long time ago. She can feel the aura of two shamans clashing, so she tries to head there with Ryu, but they both get stuck in traffic. While she panics, Ryu calms her down and tells her to have faith in Hana. Hana, worried that his opponent was way weaker than he anticipated, rushes home to fetch a first aid kit so he can provide treatment. Meanwhile, Luka Asakura finds her unconscious brother lying on the graveyard floor and vows to avenge him. Hana bumps into Tamao on his way home. He's about to tell her about what just happened, but suddenly remembers that she had just banned him from fighting, so he keeps quiet and walks away. Confused about what was going on, she concludes that the other Asakura are either weaklings or Hana is stronger than expected. She then leaves Ryu behind, telling him she has something she wants to check out. Later that day, Hana arrives home and encounters the Hanagumi hostesses, a group of shamans descended from witches, grilling mochi in his backyard. They explain that they lost everything they had since the last shaman fight and have nowhere else to go. Despite their plight, and with a more urgent matter on his mind, Hana hurriedly grabs the first aid kit he came for and rushes out, leaving them behind. When he reaches the graveyard, he discovers that Yohane is no longer there. He sits down under a tree and wonders to himself if the loser is really from the Asakura clan. Later that evening, Hana tells Ryu about the incident with Yohane, and Ryu becomes worried, suspecting that Tamao might currently be in danger. The Hanagumi hostesses interrupt to relay a message from Tamao, who called to inform them that she would be staying at an inn in Kyoto for the night. Later, Hana discusses with Amidamaru how lonely Yohane seemed. He admits to not having friends either, but notes that he doesn't exude the same loneliness as 𝐒𝐒𝐓. Glancing out the window, he sees a pretty girl with long black hair staring at him from across the street. Assuming he's about to receive a love confession, he eagerly instructs Amidamaru not to follow him as he heads out to meet her. Approaching the girl with anticipation of a confession, he is instead met with a surprise as she summons two mystical guardian lions against him. Amidamaru, alerted by the commotion, joins Hana outside. The girl identifies herself as Asakura and declares her intent to seek vengeance for her younger brother. She then uses her oversoul technique and prepares for battle. Without hesitating, Hana brings out the legendary relic and merges it with Amidamaru, transforming him into a powerful weapon. They prepare for battle and clash with Luca. During the fight, Luca takes advantage of a distraction and signals her brother to attack Hana. Her brother follows through, stabbing Hana through the chest with a swift strike. Despite his injury, Hana tries to counter-attack 𝐒𝐒𝐓, but Luca quickly interrupts him with another well-timed attack. Luca and her brother then combine their oversoul techniques, creating an immensely powerful attack aimed at obliterating Hana. However, just as they unleash their attack, a mysterious girl suddenly appears and parries it, like it is some Sekiro move. Ryu, noticing the commotion from afar, rushes out to help. He arrives to find Hana bleeding and witnesses the mysterious girl defeat the siblings easily. The mysterious girl then introduces herself as Hana the Atako, the third, and tells Hana that he must marry her in the future, or she will kill him. Hana wakes up in a hospital room and sees Amidamaru and Ryu with his samurai spirit. He tells them about this weird dream he had about a strange girl suddenly showing up and calling herself his fiancée. He tells them that even the name she called herself was weird, and that there's no way he'd want to marry a washboard like her. While he continues to tease her, he hears an angry voice from behind and turns around to see the same girl sitting behind him. Before he can say anything more, she whoops his sorry ass. She gets up and scolds Ryu and the samurai spirits for not protecting her self-declared fiancé and heads towards the door. She stops on the way and asks them to relay a message to Hana that if he refers to her as a washboard again, she'll kill him. Hana has woken up and is wandering around the hospital when he suddenly hears someone mention his name in a discussion. He approaches the person and finds out it's the leader of the same thugs he knocked out in the graveyard the other day. Apparently, he had been hospitalized since Hana knocked him out. The thug is busy ranting to his gang about how badly he has wanted to beat Hana up since that day, as Hana approaches him from behind. Ignoring their current injuries, they both charge at each other, but Ryu gets there in time and uses his body to block their attacks. While Ryu and Hana head out, the thug recognizes Ryu as the legendary thug of West Tokyo whom he has always looked up to, and wonders who Hana Asakura is. Ryu tells Hana that the reason Tamao forbade him from using spirits was to protect him because he's yet to obtain his true power. He tells him that a battle is about to begin, and then goes ahead to confirm that that's the main reason why strange people have been appearing. He tells him that the battle is called the Flower of Maize, and all shamans are required to gather enough strength to wage war against the new god that had been chosen. He adds that Alumi Niumberg, the strange girl referring to herself as Hana the Atako, the third is the star that was sent to announce the beginning of the battle. Tamao, who is in Kyoto, finds the base of the secret Asakura clan and prepares to ambush them. Ponchi and Konchi, her spirits, try to caution her not to act recklessly, but she ignores them and uses her oversoul technique and starts destroying the house. Don't these kids know how much buildings cost? Hana, on the other hand, whines like a bitch about not wanting to go to school.
Perfect!
But Amidamaru convinces him to go. To his surprise, 𝐒𝐒𝐓 gets introduced as a transfer student to his school and is placed in the same class as him. After the morning class, Hana and 𝐒𝐒𝐓 head to the rooftop where Hana challenges 𝐒𝐒𝐓 to a duel, which he declines respectfully. Instead, he tells them to try to get along. Tamao manages to get to Yokio Asakura, the leader of the secluded Asakura clan and father of 𝐒𝐒𝐓 and Luca. She gets him to use his oversoul, which she one-shots effortlessly, proving the huge difference in their power levels. Still at the high school rooftop, Amidamaru and 𝐒𝐒𝐓's spirit Ronin converse. The spirit Ronin challenges Amidamaru to a clash, but he declines. The Ronin then charges at him regardless, but Amidamaru parries his attack like a Street Fighter move. He then beats him easily, telling him he lacks battle experience and is leaving too many openings while attacking. Ronin asks Amidamaru to train him, and he agrees to it. A strange man who also happens to be a shaman watches them from a distance and talks to his spirit accomplice about his plans to fight Hana. Hana and 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐲 both head back to class, and 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈���� warns 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 about the fate that awaits him as a transfer student. He also tells him to prepare for piles of questions, some of which he tells him. He specifically warns him not to tell anybody the truth about his family, so as not to ruin either of their reputations, and he agrees to it. They both get to class with the expectation of being swarmed with questions, but instead, they meet something unexpected. A new student had been transferred to their school and placed in their class again. Stealing all the spotlight that should have been on 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏, Alumi emerges and introduces herself as the new transfer student. Due to her charisma, she gets swarmed by lots of students with curiosity written all over their faces. She tells them Hana is her fiancé, and everybody gets shocked. Asakura, on the other hand, transfers to the high school that's well known for its delinquents, and gets placed in the same class with Ichihara Ryuji, the same thug Hana whooped. Ryuji claims to have fallen in love with her at first sight, so he approaches her and introduces himself. He tells her he's the boss of the school, and that if she ever needs anything, she should let him know. Without hesitating, Luca takes up his offer and tells him there's someone she would like him to deal with for her. Later that day, Hana and 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 reflect on how Alumi had just shown up and ruined their reputation as they sneak out of school. Hana takes 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 to the mall, with their spirit guides accompanying them. Witnessing a sight they've never seen before, Amidamaru, 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏, and Daikyu, 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏's spirit, are dumbfounded. The spirits are allowed to explore the place while Hana takes 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 to a restaurant within the mall. Suddenly, Alumi appears and strikes Hana hard for abandoning her at school and spending time with a guy. Bros before hoes. She warns him to be mindful of his surroundings before departing. Still recovering from the pain of the punch, Hana stumbles to his feet and heads out of the restaurant with 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏. He mumbles about how he's scared of running into Alumi again and doesn't want to go home. 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 then invites him to come over to his house instead. Suddenly, Luca appears with Ryuji and a bunch of thugs and tells Hana to prepare for his death.
It's payback time.
Hana brings out his relic and tries to use his oversoul transformation technique, but he gets no response. Luca then laughs and shows him Amidamaru, his samurai spirit which had already been petrified. 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 asks Luca why she's still trying to kill Hana, even though their father already told them to call a truce. She replies that while she won't harm Hana directly, it's inevitable if something else causes his demise. Ryuji charges at Hana with a Bokuto, striking him hard on the head. Hana attempts to fight back, but eventually gets overwhelmed, bleeding profusely and losing consciousness. Ryuji is shocked to see the formidable Hana pass out so easily like a loser. As Hana lies on the floor, bleeding heavily, Ryuji panics and tries to flee, but Luca stops him, insisting his task isn't complete until Hana is dead. Some of his gang members try to run away, but they get knocked out by an invisible force in the process. Smiling, Luca tells Ryuji to obey her orders or face the consequences for the rest of his gang. Ryuji, on the other hand, looks at her in dread, and for the first time, he sees the strange shrine which is her oversoul behind her. Terrified, his fear deepens as she reveals the petrified Amidamaru, explaining that it is the spirit that has assisted Hana in to fight and is the reason he has never been able to defeat him before. She then orders him to finish Hana off. Meanwhile, Johan begins to suspect that his sister is possessed due to her bizarre behavior. As he prepares to battle her, he tells her she's possessed and tries to use his oversoul technique. Unfortunately for him, she has already petrified his spirit Ronin as well, rendering him practically useless. Hana meets himself in a simulation of his past when he was still a baby. He recognizes the woman carrying him as his mother, who is running from soldiers in another country alongside his father. Suddenly, a chopper approaches them and fires some bullets at all of them. This probes him to regain his consciousness with a scream. 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 and Ryuji are relieved that Hana is alive, but something feels different about him. Luca confirms that he has awakened but is still moving subconsciously. He summons a few small Onis and launches them toward the shrine. Luca fires an attack from the shrine which destroys them all. He summons another set of Onis, this time larger in size, and she destroys them again. He summons a very large one that knocks the shrine over, but Luca still manages to destroy it. Hacker! This time around, he summons a gigantic one that is practically immune to physical attacks, a dark Oni. It shatters the shrine into pieces and Luca passes out in the process. It then swallows Yohane into its darkness, who slowly passes out, until Illumi appears and destroys it. She claims to have known this was going to happen, but didn't expect it to happen this soon, while Hana lays on the floor unconscious. Illumi tells Yohane that when Hana is on the verge of death, he subconsciously enters into a Setsubun mode, where he summons Onis endlessly. She tells him it is a condition that was given to Hana by a particularly powerful being he met when he died as a baby and got resurrected. Wondering as to how a baby managed to make it to the highest spirit commune, which can only be entered by gods, Asakura Hao sits on his throne flustered. Asakura Yu, his twin brother, and Kyoyama Anna then reveal themselves and apologize for being too reckless and taking their baby to that battlefield. That was when he sent Hana back to the world with the condition that any time he's on the verge of death, he'll enter into this Setsubun mode, which will prevent it. While Illumi explains Hana's condition, the strange man who has been observing Hana for a while uses a mysterious technique to recover what was left of the shrine alongside the still petrified Amidamaru as he escapes swiftly. When Hana recovers, he gets really sad due to lapping the most uncomfortable loss. He happens to be even more worried about the fact that even if he wanted to, he just couldn't die. Luca apologizes for being a burden and admits that the reason she got possessed is because she harbored ill feelings towards him and didn't want to involve Yohane. Tamao, who managed to find them through the help of Ponchi and Conchi, shows up with Ryu and invites them all to dinner, which they all accept, excluding Illumi, who claim to have other plans. Taking Illumi's absence as an opportunity, Ryuji practically invites himself to the dinner to get closer to his idol. During the dinner, the Hanagumi stare at Yohane and wonder if he truly is a direct descendant of Hao Asakura. Hana gets up and walks out of the house, and Tamao leaves him be, understanding that he's going through a lot and just wants to be alone. Luca blames herself for what happened to him, but they all just tell her to cheer up and work together with them to bring back Amidamaru. Illumi gets back to where she has been staying and meets the people there acting weird. She then concludes that they're probably being manipulated by the same person who possessed Luca.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Sometime later, Hana sits under a tree at the usual Funbari Hill graveyard and blames himself for his uselessness without Amidamaru. He reminisces about how Amidamaru has always been his guide and companion, helping him out with a lot of things, without him even realizing it. He wonders how strong the enemy must have been to be able to capture a very strong samurai like Amidamaru, and then thinks about the fact that he had been relying on Amidamaru for strength over the years, and would need to change that. Suddenly, a mysterious boy named Gakko shows up and teases him for sitting alone at a cemetery. Hana gets pissed off and challenges the boy to a fight. The boy smiles and launches an oversoul technique, which Hana barely manages to evade. Gakko commends Hana for being able to dodge his Namahage. Hana, who didn't expect the mysterious boy to be a shaman, is flustered as he tries to evaluate his next course of action. He looks around the graveyard and wonders if he should just grab a random ghost and use it to fight. Suddenly, a bulb switches on inside his head. He focuses hard enough and can summon a few tiny Onis and coats one of them around his fist. He hits Namahage, Gakko's spirit, in the face, and Namahage's face begins to melt. Hana gets more serious and fires the rest of the Onis at Gakko as a decoy, then charges towards him with another punch that sends him crashing into the ground. Gakko gets up to see Hana, already mutated into a half-human, half-Oni monster, trying to kill him. Back at the house, Luca tells them everything she knows about their attackers. In the graveyard, the useless main character gets overwhelmed and tries to kill Gakko, who barely manages to evade all his attacks. Upon figuring out that the creature Hana has merged with is an Oni, Gakko does a full armor oversoul transformation which was gifted to him by Asakura specifically for slaying Onis. He immediately turns the tides by cutting off all of the limbs of the Oni with his special sword, putting the still raging Hana in pain. 𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐍, acknowledging the fact that Hana was able to easily summon and merge with a rare Oni, instructs 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 to finish him off before he becomes a bigger threat. Upon hearing this, 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 charges at Hana, who is still wallowing in pain, but our main character gets an upgrade and transforms in a split second into a full-armored Oni that shatters 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 sword easily. After he sends 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 and fodder 𝐒𝐒𝐶𝐻 flying, they're able to figure out that the only person capable of this power is Hana Asakura, their boss for the Flower of Maize battle. 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 gets pissed at the incompetence of their boss, and he uses his anti-Oni gun. Where was this gun all this while? To shoot Hana into pieces? But to his surprise, the Glock doesn't stop the raging boy from regenerating and charging at him. This time, he slashes him into two and knocks him out.
That was easy.
𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 and 𝐒𝐒𝐶𝐻 finally approach Hana, who had turned back to normal and was lying unconscious on the floor. 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐻 tells 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 to respect Hana since he's their boss. It then transforms into a human form. The transformation 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐻 turns into is a little girl. She then tells 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍 to refer to her as 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐿a, claiming that she only becomes 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐻 on the battlefield. After some time, Hana wakes up. He then transforms into the Oni form again and starts attacking them, but Amuli appears and sends his ass crashing. She calls him an idiot and tells him the Onis are only supposed to come out when he's on the verge of death, and that he shouldn't just try to use them anyhow without considering who will have to clean up after him. 𝐒𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 and 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐻 are amazed at how easily Illumi kicked ass compared to how much they had struggled against. She apologizes for Hana's rude behavior to them and introduces herself, before officially welcoming them to her team. She introduces Yohane, who suddenly shows up as a direct descendant of Asakura, and the chief bodyguard for their team in the upcoming Flower of Maize battle. When Hana wakes up, Illumi lectures him about the upcoming battle. She tells him that the fight started when Hao became the Shaman King because the previous Shaman Kings didn't like him. But instead of clashing against themselves and destroying the world in the process, they concluded the best way to settle their disputes was to engage in a proxy war between teams of shamans, traditionally called the Flower of Maize. Asakura Hana, who happens to be the heir to the main branch of the Asakura family, is the leader of Team Hao in the battle. The news gets Hana excited as he thinks to himself that he'll finally be free of his boring life. Don't these people have juvenile centers? She tells them all to be careful because the battle has already started, and she takes her leave. Tao-men, the son of Iron Maiden Jean, arrives in Tokyo on a private plane, accompanied by numerous bodyguards sent by his overprotective parents. Meanwhile, Yusuke, the strange man who had been spying on Hana, dispatches two of his minions to ambush Tao-men, fully aware they would die in the process. He converses with YVS, the god who created the capitalist world, about seeing his younger self in Hana and his plans to make Hana his ally soon. Tamao invites everyone over for dinner again, this time including 𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏 and 𝐒𝐒𝐻𝐻. They discuss the rules and strategies for the upcoming battle. 𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏 says the main reason he'll be participating in the battle is because the members of the winning team will each be granted a miracle, making any wish they have come true. Hana asks 𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏 what his wish would be, and 𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏 replies that his wish is to become the strongest man in the world. Disappointed, Hana apologizes for asking, and he walks out of the house.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
He heads to his usual hangout spot, while he wonders what his wish would be if they won. Having managed to shake off his bodyguards, Tao-men walks alone across the road. Yusuke's minions arrive in a car and ask him to get in, which he declines. They then confront him, claiming his parents killed their fathers and threatening his life. To their surprise, Tao-men apologizes for his parents' actions and offers to grant any request other than his death. The fools attack regardless, and he still doesn't resist. Realizing they are determined to kill him, Tao-men states he has an assignment to complete for his parents and cannot die yet. He quickly overpowers them, turning the tides in an instant. Using torture techniques to bind the two men, Tao-men turns his suitcase into a gigantic puppet which he sits on top of. The sight of the puppet makes the men crap their pants, and another scream echoes from a distance. Taumen traces the voice to find none other than Asakura Hana, the boss he was sent to Tokyo to meet by his parents. Hana stands in shock, bewildered by the sight of the puppet monster. Taumen approaches and asks if he is Asakura Hana, to which Hana responds affirmatively. Without warning, Taumen launches an attack with the puppet. Hana narrowly evades, confused and alarmed by the sudden aggression. Trying to make sense of the situation, Hana asks him if he also works for them, but Taumen ignores the question. Instead, he commends him for dodging the attack. He then urges Hana to use his special power while preparing to strike a fatal blow. Just as the attack is about to land, it is deflected at the last moment by Gakko, saving the loser. Taumen commends Gakko for being able to parry his attack even at his meager power level. He calls him his underling, and then uses a superior attack which knocks Gakko out. Taumen aims to attack Hana again, but Hana gets rescued by Yohana this time. After moving Hana to a safer spot, Yohane charges toward Taumen, who easily stops his attack and bounds him down to a different torture equipment. Hana gets frustrated at his weakness and proceeds to summon his Onis. Yohane tries to talk out of the decision, but instead, he transforms into the gigantic dark Oni he transformed into at the mall. Taumen uses his puppet to attack him, but gets surprised as his attack goes right through it. Hana then destroys the puppet with a single hit. Seeing the puppet get destroyed easily, Taumen remembers something from his past and starts bawling out his eyes. Hana, who tries to attack him in his rage, knows that it's not good to hit a teary-eyed person, notices the floodgates, so he stops. Upon seeing the boy's teary face, a memory from his comes into his head, and he realizes he was acquainted with the boy as a baby but strangely can't remember anything after then. While he dissolves the Oni, a voice answers him that the reason he doesn't have memories after that time is because they were erased. Immediately he meets himself in the highest spirit commune, standing in front of Hao Asakura, who tells him he just died. Hao then informs him that he gave him the condition to activate the Onis when he's on the verge of death, and forcing them out by himself is practically suicide. Hana tells Hao to bring him back to life, and Hao tells him that this will be the last time he'll be bringing him back to life. Hao then tells him he has a condition for him to fulfill before the next Flower of May's battle. Hao summons the 13-year-old version of Yo Asakura, Hana's father, and tells him to try to win against him. Hana, taking advantage of the fact that they're currently in the spirit commune where anything can be manifested, summons Amidamaru and charges at Yo. Yo uses a superior version of Amidamaru and counters the strike. Hana, still persistent, charges at Yo with a stronger attack, but Yo evades it easily and strikes him back. Hao and Yo talk about how Hana still has a lot of potential to get stronger as they send him on a journey into the depths of the spirit commune and prepare to use the opportunity to observe his growth. Finding himself on a strange island, Hana wonders where he is. A man dressed in military uniform then approaches him with a gun, asks him what he's doing in a war zone, and threatens to shoot him if he does not identify himself. The retard doesn't take him seriously and bursts into laughter, calling him lame for thinking he can fool him with a trick like that. The soldier fires a shot into the air to prove his seriousness before turning away and telling Hana to get lost. Suddenly a plane approaches them and the man grabs Hana and hides behind a rock, telling him it's an enemy fighter who had come to scout for survivors on the island. He then beckons on Hana to help him move his plane, which had crashed by the shore, to a more hidden place because the enemy would eventually come to retrieve it. Hana joins him and they both try to move the plane, but due to its weight and the amount of sand at the shore, it takes them a lot of time. They finally get it somewhere hidden just before sunset. After a good job, the soldier thanks Hana for his assistance while they make a fire and camp around it. Hana, who has just figured out that he's still in the Great Spirit, tells the man bluntly, like in Fist of the North Star, that he is already dead and that his spirit got trapped inside the Great Spirit. As expected, the soldier doesn't believe him.
You serious?
But Hana goes ahead to explain that he's probably stuck in a mini Ashura hell, a version of one of the 6 realms reserved for people who spent their lives fighting and have been destined to repeat the battles eternally. The soldier asks Hana who he is, and Hana tells him he's a shaman. The soldier then tells Hana that if what he just said is true, then it means he's also in the mini Asura hell alongside him. Hana gets scared. Suddenly, a light is seen from a distance on the scene and is approaching them. The soldier immediately puts off the fire and identifies the light to be coming from a group of soldiers who have come to recover his plane. Gaku, Yohane, and Taomen stand over Hana's lifeless body and wonder what to do with him. Gaku and Yohane ask Taomen what he's doing here in the first place, and Taomen tells them that he's also a member of Team Hao, which Alumi suddenly appears and confirms to be true. She describes him as a child who was born from the union of two legendary heroes, and as a result was able to control very powerful spirits from a very young age. Alumi then tell them that Hana is currently on a trip to remember his true self and that he'll be back once he matures a bit. She instructs them to store his useless flesh in a freezer, even though maggots won't stoop so low into feasting on it when it decays. She just makes them do the right thing before he gets back. The soldier takes Hana to the top of a hill where he quietly observes the elite troop that is already on the island. Deducing that they both won't stand a chance against the troop, the soldier uses himself as a diversion and tells Hana to run away. The enemies shoot at the soldier, who acts as a distraction for Hana to escape. Hana, finally figuring out the missing piece to the puzzle Yo gave him during their clash, gets up with a smirk on his face and summons a katana from nowhere. He uses Oversoul with it and creates a demon helmet. He charges at the soldiers and ends up obliterating every single one of them, while the soldier watches in awe. The soldier finally gives what Hana told him a deep thought, and he remembers how he died in battle. He begs Hana for a favor and asks him to retrieve his plane and his body from the bottom of the sea. While Hana converses with the soldier on the island, a strange man appears and invites them to his cafe, which has just spun out of nowhere on the island, for a conversation. They follow him into the cafe and he introduces himself as Talim, a patch official in the previous shaman fight. Hao had sent him to the mini Asura hell to look after Hana. Meanwhile, in the real world, Hana's corpse is kept in a freezer, and Alumi tells the others that he is in the mini Asura hell. Gaki makes fun of him, saying he always knew someone like him would end up in hell, but Yohane asks her how she knows where he is. She then answers him, telling him she's a patch and can communicate through different worlds. She then decides to abandon her friend to go to class. It's either she's too trusting or her love for education cannot be matched. She then tells them to watch his body so he won't freeze to death when he gets back. While she leaves, she tells them to engage in collective training, as the Flower of Maize tournament is going to be harder than they're all anticipating. Taomen asks Ryu to show him his mother's intermediary, the Iron Maiden, which was entrusted to him since the last shaman fight. Ryu opens the door that leads to the room where the Iron Maiden had been kept. Taomen inspect the relic and tell them it's a fake. Red Seb and Sairam, the flower shop staff, show up immediately and admit to replacing the Iron Maiden with a counterfeit without him noticing. They claim to have done it for a little girl with black hair who shows up behind them. Seeing the girl, Taomen loses his temper and charges at the girl and starts to attack. She blocks off all his attacks with an armor oversoul. She tells him it's pointless to attack, but
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
Taomen keeps charging at her. The girl then brings out the original Iron Maiden mask and Taomen stops attacking. She then laughs as she tells him how she killed his mum, the real Iron Maiden, so she could become her spirit ally. She does an oversoul transformation with the mask, and Taomen is dumbfounded, mistaking her next attack from the Iron Maiden as a warm embrace from his mother. Because of this foolish act, his bones break like cookies. Tamao, who was out shopping the whole time, gets back home and asks what is going on while emitting a very high spiritual energy. Everybody, including the girl, gets drenched in fear at her arrival. She declares enmity against Team YVS and invites them to come in for a conversation. Meanwhile, Talim explains to Hana that the only way he can escape from hell is by transforming his soul by getting stronger within the commune. Hana asks Talim why he's here, and Talim explains to him that it has been a tradition for the shaman fight officials to serve the new king, and that's how he ended up serving Hao. Yusuke, who happened to have followed Hana to hell, plots with the general of the soldiers on the other side of the sea about how to defeat the boy who single-handedly obliterated his troops. Yusuke recalls how he met 𝐒𝐕𝐍 when he was on the verge of committing suicide as a kid, when a captain approached him and told him that for some reason, he didn't seem like he was from their world. Yusuke gets approached by Anderson, the captain, who tells him he seems to be from a different world. Impressed, Yusuke suggests that they visit the island together with the captain's plane. They get into the plane and fly to the island. On their way to the island, Captain Anderson tells Yusuke that he is suspicious and that they are not in the real world, but seeing the two strange people on the island confirms it for him. Back on the island, the soldier asks Hana what his reason for fighting is, and he can't seem to come up with an answer. Unsatisfied, he tells Hana that he has to have a reason for fighting or else he'd just be fighting in vain. He proceeds to tell Hana stories about his past and how he got caught up in a war and was forced to start fighting for a purpose. As Hana steps outside, he reflects on the soldier's words. A memory of his father suddenly triggers a surge of anger, causing him to unintentionally unleash his oversoul technique, damaging part of the cafe. Amid this turmoil, a plane unexpectedly crashes into the cafe. Yohane emerges and introduces himself. He tells Hana that despite his appearance, they're age mates, and that this is not the first time they'll be meeting. Hana is not buying anything he says, so he charges in for an attack. Surprisingly, Yohane brings out a card that transforms into Hana's weapon and blocks his attack. What an asshole. He proceeds to pull out a different card that transforms into the superior version of Amidamaru, which Yo used to defeat Hana.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
The sight throws Hana off balance. Yusuke then seizes the opportunity and lands a hit on Hana. He provokes Hana more by showing him the petrified version of Amidamaru, and Hana transforms into an Oni, but still gets knocked out by Yusuke easily. Despite Talim's warnings, the soldier heads out of the ruined cafe and confronts Yusuke. Talim had been instructed by Hao not to interfere in the already predicted fight, so he's forced to watch. Anderson, who has been on the plane the whole time, recognizes the soldier as the pilot responsible for his death. He picks up a gun and aims it at the soldier, but hesitates to pull the trigger. The soldier, however, draws his gun and shoots Anderson instead. He then fires at Yusuke, who stops time just before the bullet reaches him. Come on, there was no hint that he had such powers. Yusuke moves the bullet, redirecting it to the soldier's neck before resuming time, causing the bullet to pierce through the soldier's neck. Despite his injury, the soldier grabs Yusuke by the head and lightens his magazine on him. Suddenly, Anderson, the soldier, and Hana are teleported to a different location, leaving Talim behind. Two other messengers of Hao appear and reassure Talim not to grieve, explaining that anyone who dies within the Great Spirit will be endlessly reborn in different communes. They also reveal that Hao has a plan to make Sakurai Sakutaru, the soldier, Hana's new spirit ally. As they notice 𝐒𝐕𝐍, the god Yusuke had been holding lying unconscious, they move to pick it up. At that moment, another group of deities suddenly arrives and claims it. Hana, still recovering from the pain from Yusuke's attack, regains his consciousness and meets himself in a different commune. Over tea, the flower shop staff tell Tamao bluntly that Team Hao has no chance of winning apparently because 𝐒𝐕𝐍, their god, has solidified his control of the earth since 70 years ago. Redse proposes to Tamao to disband Team Hao, instead of seeing the battle through, and she points it out to them that since their Black Maiden has already caused some bloodshed, they're in no position to negotiate. Tamao asks if the girl killed Jean and Redse testifies to it. She then tells them that she'll consider their proposal but will only give them an answer when Hana gets back, and they go with it. Hana wanders around and sees a lot of planes which, unlike Sakurai's own, are not crashed. He gets confronted by Sakurai, who looks a lot younger. Like a signature move, Sakurai fires some rounds of bullets towards him and deliberately misses. Hana tries to explain that they've both been acquainted before, but he doesn't seem to remember anything. A group of other soldiers approach Sakurai to find out the cause of the commotion. They see Hana and assume that he's probably the son of some high-ranking officer because of how well-dressed he appears to be. They invite him into their base where Hana tells them that they're all dead and currently living in a simulation of an endless loop. They resonate with his point because they have already been deployed to go on a suicide attack. Later that night, Hana confronts Sakurai and asks him why he's about to throw his life away under the belief of trying to save his loved ones. Their base suddenly gets ambushed by enemies, and Hana ends up on the same plane with Sakurai while they escape the base. Some enemies approach them on different planes and shoot at them, but Sakurai, who is more bothered about Hana's safety, instructs his squad to cover him while he gets Hana to safety. Losing most of his men, he is left with no choice but to fight, so he proves his superiority in battle as he easily takes down the enemies one by one, ensuring he kills them all. He is then left with the commander, who happens to be Yusuke. He aims at Yusuke and gets disturbed by Hana, who hits him and asks him why he has to kill everybody. Annoyed, Sakurai pulls out a pistol and shoots Hana in the head. What a plot twist. Finding himself amid Sakurai's men who lost their lives in the battle, Hana gets made jest for dying the way he did. Sakurai's men tell Hana that Sakurai never intended to shoot him, but only had to do so because Hana was trying to interface with his purpose, which is to kill all his enemies and kill himself afterwards. Hana then understands the question Sakurai asked him back at the cafe, and he tells the men that they're wrong and that there's probably something bigger he's fighting for. Hana finally figures out the missing hint he needs to escape the mini Ashura hell, and that strength that will allow him to compete in the Flower of May's battle. It's love.